Premier Horgan, thanks for taking the time to speak with us today. I have some questions for you, some that are based on the input of our audience online. I'd like to start on the topic of jobs. The latest job numbers show that the province has lost more than 40,000 private sector jobs since your government came into power. Steady growth in jobs has slowed down. Do you think your government has done enough to protect and grow the number of jobs here in British Columbia?
British Columbia continues to have the lowest unemployment rate in the country, just shed above 5% at the last data set that I saw. Things are going very well in British Columbia, but we can always do better. A year ago, when I was sworn in as Premier, I was packing my bags to go to Washington, D.C. to fight for jobs in the forest industry, and we're still having that battle with a protectionist government in the United States that's taking trade actions against things like our aluminum sector in Kitimat, our pulp sector on Vancouver Island and in Powell River. But we're doing the best we can. Private sector growth is continuing, and I'm pretty happy with the way things are going right now.
Right, but Premier, I mean, you're saying that the private sector jobs growth is going well, but we've lost 40,000 jobs in a year.
Yeah, well, that goes up and down. The data comes out every month, and as I say, we're leading the country with the lowest unemployment rate we have for the past 12 months, just shy of 5%. I think that we can always do better, but on balance, I think the economy is doing very, very well. We've got a fiscal plan for the next 3 years that shows balanced budgets and continued investments in new infrastructure that will help the private sector grow as well. We need to improve our ports, our roads, our bridges, our transit, so that the private sector continue to make investments to grow our economy.
Now, one of the defining issues of your first year as Premier has been the dispute over the Trans Mountain Pipeline project. It's put your government at odds with both the federal government and our neighbors to the east. Now, the federal government has taken over the project. Has that changed your approach?
Not at all. I've had a positive working relationship with the Prime Minister on a range of issues that affect people's lives in British Columbia, whether it's working to get infrastructure money for new transit opportunities, developing opportunities for our forest sector by working with the Minister of Trade in our relationships with not just the United States, but with Asia and Europe. We've been working very positively on a whole host of issues. We want to focus on fisheries. There's a new fisheries minister appointed today from British Columbia. That's very good news for wild salmon. I look forward to working with him in a very collegial and cooperative way in the days and months ahead.
Now, among those host of issues that you're talking about, have you spoken to Justin Trudeau about the future of the pipeline project specifically?
The pipeline project is one that I don't believe is in the interests of British Columbia. The consequences of a catastrophic spill on our marine environment, on our marine economy are significant. I've made that abundantly clear to the Prime Minister. They're going to continue down their track. We are in court trying to determine who has jurisdiction so that we can protect the interests of British Columbia. Beyond that, it's up to the Prime Minister to make those calls. If he's becoming the owner of the pipeline, he'll have issues he's going to have to address with respect to Indigenous rights along the corridor, certainly in Burrard Inlet, the city of Burnaby, the city of Vancouver, very uncomfortable about a 7-fold increase in tanker traffic.
All right, your government had promised to bring in ride-hailing legislation by the end of 2017. We are now well into 2018 and still no ride-sharing. Many British Columbians are asking, why is it taking so long?
Well, we have to consider the small businesses, the private sector investment in the taxi sector that employs many, many British Columbians. We need to make sure that the taxi industry is on a good footing as we introduce competition. Now, you'll know that ride-sharing competition is usually housed outside of British Columbia. It comes in to skim the cream from the sector. They're not obliged in some jurisdictions to be able to pick up people with disabilities, for example, and a whole host of other issues. We want to make sure the playing field is level. Criminal records checks, insurance, all of those issues are not as simple as the ride-sharing advocates would have us believe. We have a lot of work to do, but at the end of the day, it's about making life better for British Columbians, and we're working on that every single day.
Yeah, Premier, I think everyone can agree that we want there to be safety checks. But this taxi industry that you're talking about, there was a review that was commissioned. It was the review was supposed to be released in the spring. It's now summertime. When are we expecting it to come out?
The Minister of Transportation, I believe, is going to be talking about that later in the week.
Okay, all right. In a week, that sounds good. And now your government was counting on the property transfer tax to bolster your budget come February. We're now seeing a decline in home sales month over month, and that means a decline in revenue for your government. Are you still confident that you'll be able to deliver a balanced budget in February?
Very confident. We'll be releasing the public accounts for the last fiscal year. That happens every year in July and early August. They'll show positive indications on the surplus and continued growth going forward. The economy of British Columbia is very dynamic. It doesn't depend on one project. It doesn't depend on one stream of revenue. We've had enormous growth in our forest industry because of high commodity prices. On the mining side, we've seen positive activity with respect to copper and coal. So we've seen our traditional industries doing very, very well. And it's the new economy that's really driving job growth, not just in the Lower Mainland, but right across the province. When people think of the tech sector, it's not just one area. It's not just gaming and animation. It's bringing new technologies to medical research. It's bringing new technologies to our traditional industries. The film sector is booming. Things are going very, very well in British Columbia, but that doesn't mean we rest on our laurels. We have to continue to make sure we have a competitive environment. That's why we reduced the small business tax in British Columbia, and why we've reduced the tax for our larger traditional industries when it comes to electricity purchases. The PST is no longer required, or it's been cut in half, and next year it will end altogether. And it's the other issues I think British Columbians are more focused on. Eliminating the medical services premiums, or putting money back into people's pockets. A child care program, the most ambitious program the country's seen in a generation, is making sure that young families can find spaces and that those spaces are not breaking the bank.
Now, so Premier, you've mentioned growth in some sectors, of course, but I think housing affordability is still a major issue for many people.
And it took 16 years to get to where we are, and it won't take 16 minutes to fix it. We have a 30-point plan when it comes to the housing sector to stimulate more supply, to make sure that we're curbing the demand by bringing in curbs on foreign investment and speculation. But these issues did not arrive yesterday, and they won't be fixed tomorrow.
Okay, we'll leave it right there. Thank you so much, Premier John Horgan.
Thanks for talking to you.